All right, so here's something that confuses a lot of people, and especially women that are interested in HRT or hormone replacement therapy, because there's always that looming concern about breast cancer. So breast cancer risk actually goes up after menopause, right? Well, it's weird, right? Because that's a time when estrogen and progesterone are at their lowest. And it was always something that, I said, if hormones are driving cancer, then shouldn't your risk be the highest during puberty and reproductive years? And why is it that we spend 30 years on hormones and then all of a sudden we're told they cause cancer? I think it's a little ridiculous. So the question is, what's really happening here? And the answer might be surprising, right? And it is a discussion. It's something that we're still learning a lot about, but I always want to keep the doors open. I don't want to shut down research on any one side and just say, oh, I only believe this. Well, I want to know what's real and what's not real and what's true and what's not true. So I'm not camp this or camp that. But the question is it estrogen? And I have my hesitations about that because I don't anything that the body makes, like hormones that are so absolutely essential to a fully functioning, properly functioning body. It's hard to say that it's going to turn against you and turn into cancer as soon as you hit 50. Like, it doesn't make any sense. So maybe it's not about how much estrogen you have, but what's binding to your estrogen receptors. And this starts to make more sense to me, right? So that includes fake estrogens from the environment. This definitely makes more sense to me that something from the environment is causing cancer as opposed to the body. So let's start with the basics. During puberty and the reproductive years, estrogen and progesterone are high. They're cycling monthly. This creates a lot of growth signals, lots of repair. And then when menopause arrives, estrogen and progesterone, they fall sharply. Whoop, they're gone, right? But here's the key. The receptors don't go away. They're still there, right? They're still sitting there. They're waiting for something to bind. Like, hey, where's the estrogen? Where'd it go? So think of these receptors like empty chairs, right? Before menopause, natural estrogen and progesterone were sitting in them. They're giving normal, balanced instructions. And then after menopause, your chairs are empty, but they're still open to whoever wants to sit down. So they're just, and that's where the modern environment comes in. And look at all the things that are around us, right? Chemicals that look a little bit like estrogen to the body. These are called endocrine disruptors or xenoestrogens. So plastics like BPA and phthalates, pesticides, herbicides in our food, parabens and phthalates in lotions, detergents, shampoos, deodorants, chemicals in sunscreens, your nonstick pans, even receipts that, all this stuff has chemicals on it. And they have fake estrogens. And the fake estrogens are weaker than natural estrogen, but they still activate the receptor. And unlike our hormones, which rise and fall, these disruptors are there all the time. So you have a steady drip of the wrong instructions. Now imagine this in the context of a BRCA mutation, right? So, we talked about BRCA, and the BRCA gene is what repairs your DNA system. And it also at the same time talks to your metabolism because it turns off ACC, which is a fat building faucet. So if ACC is running unchecked, then you have issues, right? So now imagine you have BRCA mutation, your DNA repair system is weaker, and your ACC is running unchecked. That's two strikes against you. Now you add in endocrine disruptors binding to a hormone receptor. That's your third strike. And DNA instability, metabolic imbalance, and a hijacked hormonal signaling. Together that creates a perfect environment for cancer to develop. So in that respect, I would say it's even more important, especially as you're going through perimenopause, to make sure that you do start hormone therapy so that you actually have hormones, real hormones, and not hormone disruptors or xenoestrogens binding to your hormone receptors. But here's the thing, you don't have to have a BRCA mutation to be at risk. Everyone is exposed to endocrine disruptors every single day, unfortunately. So in women without BRCA, the combination of lower natural estrogen after menopause plus higher environmental exposures still creates risk. So this helps explain why breast cancer is more common later in life. And it's not just about our natural hormones. It's about what's sitting in those receptor chairs and keeping them active. right? Previously, before, when you didn't have endocrine disruptors and pesticides and all kinds of, let's say 100 years ago, those, well, first of all, 100 years ago, women didn't always live much past menopause, right? So to be real. But when they did, they didn't just necessarily develop cancer. What happens is that if those receptors aren't used, they basically just stop signaling and they get cleaved and they go away, and then that's that. But if you have something that keeps them alert and open, that's the problem. So when you have these endocrine disruptors and xenoestrogens that don't allow the receptors to go away, then you almost have to replace with hormone therapy to mitigate your risk of cancer, because if you get these xenoestrogens in those receptors instead of real estrogen, then you're just going to have issues. So what can you do? Well, you can reduce exposure. So you want to use glass and stainless steel instead of plastic. Plastic's a huge, huge problem. And there's the endocrine disruptors that are in plastic. I mean, it's disgusting how much our bodies have been just destroyed by plastic in the last 50 years. Bioorganic when possible, even that's not, it's not perfect, because if inorganic, if they're using pesticides, or they're next to a farm that's using pesticides, or whatever the case may be, it's something that you have to really look into. So, and especially when you're buying your dirty dozen type fruits. So like blueberries, strawberries, that kind of stuff. Personal care products labeled, you want to make sure that you're choosing things that are paraben and phthalate free. Because if you think about it, your skin is your largest organ, right? And if you're constantly cleaning yourself with chemicals because your shampoo and your soap have parabens and phthalates in them, which are endocrine disruptors, which are xenoestrogens, then you're in a hot shower, right? And putting these chemicals on, that means the skin is really opened up and allows all those chemicals to absorb deeply into the skin. So things to think about. Things we don't want to think about, but unfortunately we have to think about. So, and then support detox pathways. So using vegetables like broccoli, Brussels sprouts, they provide sulforaphane and DIM, which help the liver detox estrogens and xenoestrogens. Fiber helps to bind estrogen metabolites in the gut, because the estrogen has to be metabolized, and that could be another issue too. So if you have poor detoxification processes, or you have genetically poor glutathione detox, then you can build up estrogen levels if you don't metabolize it well. Those are things to consider. So that's why you don't want to just do things at random. I know sometimes it gets expensive doing a different test and stuff, and it's really, really important to get a good picture and a good idea of what your body specifically does, because what is fine for Gina down the street doesn't mean it's okay for you, because you have a completely different body system. You have a completely different genetic layout, and you're going to respond to things differently. And then use natural blockers. So flaxseed, other phytoestrogens can bind to estrogen receptors more weakly than disruptors, but they can essentially act as placeholders. So you'd much rather have flaxseed sitting in your estrogen receptors than plastic, right? So here's the bottom line after menopause. It's not the absence of estrogen that drives the risk. It's the fact that the receptors are still active and vulnerable to being hijacked by environmental chemicals. So when you combine that with DNA repair problems and metabolic imbalance, then you get the perfect storm. But again, here's the good news. While you can't change your genes, you can change your metabolism, you can change your environment. There's procedures out there, like we do at Philly Wellness Center. We do EBOO, which is extracorporeal blood ozonization and oxygenation, and it uses a filter, and we can filter out chemicals and plastics and microplastics and stuff like that. So again, you can't change your genes, you can change your metabolism. And in the next video, we are going to put it all together in an action plan so you can lower your risk and strengthen your resilience.